Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the chamber. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee. I'm Andrea Kelly. I'm the chair. Is that me making that bad noise? With us tonight in the chamber, we have most of the members of the Land Use Committee. We have Allison Leary, who's from Ward 1, Tariq Lucas from Ward 2. I'm from Ward 3. From Ward 4, we have Councillor Randy Block. From Ward 5, we have Alan Lobovitz. 6. Oh, sorry. No, 6 is Alan. 7 is Stephen Farrell. And we will be joined by President.
I'm online.
Oh, sorry, 5, Andrea Downs. We will be joined by President Laredo on Zoom very soon. We have some important staff members with us tonight. We have our clerk, Katie Holmes, and some members of the planning department, Kat Kemet and Jen Kyra. We also have from the planning department, though he escaped as I'm about to introduce him, Zach Lamel, who's actually here. Oh, now you're facing me. I'm not looking at the back of your head. He's staffing the planning and development board tonight. And we have Jonah Temple from the law department. And I will introduce other people as I see them come in. And again, I'm not sure if that's my microphone that keeps making that bad noise, but you can all let me know. We're having a joint meeting with the Planning and Development Board tonight, and I'm going to let the chair, Kevin McCormick, introduce his members. They're here because part of this petition is a request to rezone, and when there's a rezoning involved, planning and development weighs in and has their own meeting. So Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself and your other members?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kevin McCormick, Chair of the Board. Also here is Jim O'Connell, who's here in person. Online is Peter Doringer, and I have more. I don't see anybody else right now. We'll check in. Thank you, Chair.
We have some other city councilors who are joining us via Zoom, not necessarily members of the Land Use Committee, but very welcome to be with us. We have Councillor Lenny Gentile, Rick Lipoff, Maria Greenberg. And again, I will continue to notice or recognize people as I see them come in. So the only item on our agenda.
Councillor Princeman is here as well.
Excuse me?
Councillor Princeman is here as well.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Josh Krinsman. Thanks. The only item on our agenda tonight is the Riverside Mixed Use Project. And again, it's in 2 different parts, but we'll be talking about them all together. I'm going to go through different stages of it and explain where we're at with each stage, particularly when it comes to public comment, because I might be doing that a little bit differently tonight, depending on how many people want to speak and how much time we have left. We're going to start with a presentation by the development team. If they would like to come to the microphone, and they'll lead off and introduce themselves and what topic they're on. Thank you, Mr. Bookbinder.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Land Use Committee, Chairman of the Planning Board, members of the Planning Board, city staff, peer review team. For the record, my name is Stephen Bookbinder. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Schlesinger and Bookbinder with offices at 1200 Walnut Street in Newton Highlands. I feel as though I should note that I began working on this project in 2009, which was 2 years after Councillor Gentile started working on the project. I'm here this evening on behalf of the petitioner, MS Riverside Fee Owner LLC, which is an affiliate of Mark Development. Robert Korf, the principal of Mark Development, is here. You'll be hearing from him in a few moments. I know that you're all familiar with the site, which consists of approximately 9.34 acres and is located at the nexus of 2 major highways, Route 95 and the Mass Pike, and it also sits at the terminus of the Green Line, which makes it a most unusual site. By way of background, and is noted in the very comprehensive memorandum prepared by the Planning Department, there have been several other iterations of this project. Back in 2013, the then Board of Aldermen authorized the rezoning of the MBTA parcel from public use to mixed use 3 and approved a special permit for a mixed use development at the site. In 2020, the project parcel was expanded, to include the Hotel Indigo site, and the city council approved a new special permit for another mixed-use development consisting of 10 buildings comprised of residential, office, hotel, and commercial space. In 2021, the Mark Development Team came back seeking an amendment to the 2020 council order, which the city council approved, to include approximately 370,000 square feet of lab research and development space and to allow certain dimensional changes to the project. That project was never constructed, that special permit was never exercised, and that zone change never went into effect. We're here this evening on what I call Riverside 4, seeking a special permit for a much smaller project consisting of primarily 6 residential buildings with attached multi-level garage and about 20,000 square feet of ancillary retail space. We're also seeking certain text amendments to the mixed-use 3 district and a map change to rezone the Hotel Indigo from business use 5 to mixed-use 3. The text changes are consistent with the new proposal and reflect, among other things, the reduced land area, the exclusion of the lab office space, and the resulting changes to density, height, and other bulk dimensional criteria. We've provided you with a red line of the MU3 text which show the proposed amendments. I'm not going to take the time to go through those tonight. Obviously, we're happy to answer questions, but we have a lot of other things to cover. As I mentioned, the map change of the Hotel Indigo parcel is required because the 2020 map change was never executed. For the past year, Mark Development and its team have been working closely with the Neighborhood Liaison Group and the Ward 4 councilors in a very collaborative fashion. We have met, I'd say, every few weeks, and the input which we've received from the Neighborhood Liaison Group and the Ward 4 councilors have helped shape the project which you'll see this evening. As with most of these things, I don't know that anyone is totally thrilled with each and every aspect of the project. That would include the developer, but we think we got to a place that represents a place where people can rest and feel reasonably good about. We did hold a well-attended virtual community meeting back on September 4th. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight. I'm going to apologize in advance because I really had hoped it would be a bit shorter, but we're going to do the best we can. You're going to hear first from Robert, who's going to talk a little bit about the differences between this proposal and the prior proposal. You're then going to hear from Rob Adams of Halverson, who's going to talk about site design and site connectivity. Our architect, Michael Lawson of Minnow and Wasco, will walk you through the building design. And Randy Hart will take you through the transportation. So with that, I'll turn this over to Robert.
Thank you. While Mr. Korf is coming to the microphone, I want to read into record the official docket item numbers for this, and also mention that we've been joined online on Zoom by Councilors Julia Maliki and John Oliver. These 2 docket items are number 238-25, which is the request to rezone, and number 239-25, which is the request to construct the mixed-use development. Thank you, Mr. Korf. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Robert Korf, Principal Mark Development, also longtime resident of 30 years in Newton. Pleased to be here before you this evening on this long overdue project. But I think we hopefully have finally settled in here on an iteration that is marketable and constructible if this council sees in their infinite wisdom approval. So I'm just going to start by giving you a brief overview of the project. It's not clicking. Backwards, wrong direction. Why don't you turn for me? It's on now.
Press down.
All right. Sorry about that little technical difficulty. Been a while since I've been up here. All right, so what you see here is the comparison of site plans from the previously approved project up on top, situated on 11.7 acres. And that iteration, the previous approval had 10 buildings on site, 2 of which were lab office buildings, and the remaining buildings were residential. So in trying to simplify this project for today's economic times, the project's been downsized to 9.34 acres. So MBTA is maintaining now the eastern portion of the parking lot. Up on screen, you can see it to the right on the bottom, and that parking lot will stay as is and maintained by the MBTA, and it currently has approximately 280 to 290 parking stalls. All right, so here are some of the basic metrics of the project being compared to the previously approved project. Before, we had 1,025,000 square feet. It's been downsized now to 885 approximately. Previous approved project was 550 residential units. We're now at 750. Retail is primarily the same, about 1,000, 1,500 square feet less at 20,130. The big change here is we no longer have any office component. So the office lab has been eliminated, and no office commercial on the current iteration. Parking has also been downsized from 2,172 total parking spaces to 1,405, of which 286 are the MBTA surface stalls that are going to remain. I keep going wrong direction. I think I got one more slide. Hold on. There we go. So here's the current unit mix that we're contemplating for the 750 units. And we put this on screen to emphasize the percentage skewed to larger units, 2-bedroom, 3 bedrooms of 45%, which, typically is more towards 2s and 3s than you'd see in most projects. Most would be 35, perhaps 40%. But we did hear from the community and some counselors that we're currently in a situation in the schools where Williams is under-enrolled, and we're looking to bring more students into the community, and we have acquiesced by, bringing in more 2-3 bedrooms than we typically would. So those are just the general matrix of the property in comparison to the last property. I'm going to turn it over now to Rob Adams from Halverson, who will take you through site access circulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Adams.
Thank you. Technology is against us. Okay. So Robert Adams, I'm a principal landscape architect at Halverson Design Partnership here in Boston. We have offices now all over New England, but our heart is here in Boston. I'm going to stay at a very high level so that we have time for questions and answers. I'm going to talk about circulation vehicles to the site, pedestrian circulation to the site and around the site, and then narrow in on the site itself. And then we'll pass it off to Randy to talk a little bit more granularly about transportation. And then back to myself, and we'll talk about site design, and Mike will talk about architecture. We'll get in deeper.
Before you launch into that, I'm hearing that some people are having difficulty hearing you. So
Great.
try and speak
That's
close.
probably the first time.
Might
that's
just
ever
be you
been
have a nice
said.
deep voice, but if you can speak as close to the.
Yes,
on
I
that will
can.
help.
Is that better?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So we'll talk about transportation, both vehicular and pedestrian, and then Randy will talk a little bit more granularly about some of the transportation numbers. So this diagram that you see on screen, north is to the right. Obviously, Grove Street runs kind of horizontally across the page, Riverside's at the top, Community Center, Lower Falls to the left. This will be the orientation for all the graphics you see tonight. So this is just a diagram of the existing circulation, vehicular circulation as it exists on site. The proposed, sorry, seems to be epidemic tonight. So the proposed solution, or the proposed vehicular circulation, is shown now on the screen. Introduces two roundabouts, one to the north and one to the south of I-95, maintains Grove Street in its two-way existence, improves the on-ramp to a two-way road that runs east-west from the Rotary to Main Street, and then ultimately connects to the off-ramp of I-95, or the CD road as it's called. And so this is, we won't get into too much detail, but this is the general proposed vehicular circulation. The pedestrian circulation, I think, has some more kind of meat on the bones as far as public benefits. Two really important moves. One is the continuous pedestrian circulation from the MBTA site all the way southerly to the community center in a clean and contiguous improved pedestrian corridor. As well as a new pedestrian link to the west to Riverside Park and ultimately the MWRA site. And then obviously some connections from Grove Street onto our site and maintaining all the existing pedestrian connections that exist down in the Lower Falls area. Diving a little bit deeper into those pedestrian improvements to the south. So starting at the community center, a new and improved public sidewalk along that western edge of Grove Street, continuing all the way to the bridge overpass. At the bridge overpass, it turns into a protected bike lane, bike facility, as well as a pedestrian sidewalk. And then once you cross, if you're headed northerly, cross the bridge, as you approach the project site, there becomes a protected median, which allows a pedestrian to cross one lane of traffic, find shelter, and then cross the other crosswalk into our site. And so provides that clean and safe pedestrian connection. On our site, once you get onto the Riverside property itself, heading north on Grove Street, you'll see in more detail, but a separated bike facility and pedestrian sidewalk. As you head west from that roundabout, a shared multi-use path, which ultimately, as I said, connects all the way down to the MWRA site and the regional trail network. Within our site, we have clean and clear pedestrian corridors, sidewalks, streetscapes along Main Street and some of the secondary streets, as well as some primary connections from Grove Street down into Main Street itself. Just to note, there's a little bit of grade change between Grove Street and Main Street, about 25 feet at its apex, more or less, at that set of stairs between buildings 2 and 3. And I think that is, I think that is it for my part. Randy will talk a little bit more granularly about the transportation numbers, and then I'll be back to talk about public realm.
Before you speak, Randy, I just want to mention that we've been joined in the chamber by Councillor Susan Albright and on Zoom by President Mark Laredo. Go ahead. Thanks.
Good evening, Randy Hart. I'm a principal with VHB. We are the transportation consultants on the project. As part of our work, we prepared a very detailed traffic impact and access study that was submitted to the city back in early July. And since that time, the study has been issued to the city-appointed peer consultant, Green International. And late last week, we received some comments that we're working through at the moment. And we look forward to talking to you about that probably at the next meeting. But tonight, I'm just going to touch on several aspects of the transportation work and what we're proposing. As Robert's already mentioned, the project is being downsized significantly since the approval in 2021, and he gave you the numbers, so I'm not going to repeat them. But what does that mean from a traffic perspective? It means that traffic's also going down, and substantially so. The table in front of you shows weekday daily traffic activity. For the left column was the approved project. The middle column is for the proposed project, and the right column is basically what the change is by percentage. So on a weekday daily basis, we're 60% less traffic than we were in 2021 as part of that project. So it's significant. Before we get into what's proposed, I wanted to go back to what was proposed back in 2021 because there's some relevant aspects to it. First, this is the proposed plan from 2021 that was approved. It showed development on the entire parking lot of Riverside Station, and it showed two access points, one at the existing Grove Street driveway, which was supposed to be signalized, a new access on the far western side of the site to the on-ramp to the CD road. It creates a four-way intersection that would have been signalized. And then to the south of that, the Grove Street would be modified to a T type of intersection, which would also have a signal at it as well. The southbound ramp, we had proposed a modern day roundabout as shown on the plan. What many people in this room and on Zoom probably don't know is shortly after the 2021 approval, we started the design of the 25% for Mass DOT with this plan in mind. And what we found very, very quickly was that the traffic volumes just weren't at the level that would be necessary to support signals at any of the three locations. Ever since, pandemic, and traffic has not recovered in this area. We've monitored it a number of times over the years, and it's not even close to what it was. So DOT was telling us pretty clearly that you're not getting signals until you meet warrants, if you ever do. So that became an issue that we really wanted to focus on as we looked at Riverside this new time. So this is just a site plan that shows the proposed project, and it shows basically that we're only developing the western portion of the site. As you come in the driveway today, everything to the left would be redeveloped, but the surface parking for the T to the right will remain as is. We are proposing that access remain as it is, and it would be unsignalized under this plan. We are also proposing on the far western side of the site, a T-type intersection on the access ramp to CD Road. It would become a T-type intersection with stop control on Main Street, which is the internal roadway. And today, if you're headed on the access road to the CD road, or the on-ramp, I guess I call it, it's one way in a northbound direction. Under this proposal, it becomes two-way between Main Street and Grove Street. So you would be allowed to make a left-hand turn out of that intersection and go back to Grove Street under this plan. So this is a broader view, and it shows the site plan as it did before, but we are also showing what we're proposing at the two 128 ramp terminals with Grove Street. We're proposing modern day roundabouts at both single lane roundabouts, and that will serve a number of purposes. One, it improves operations at those intersections today. It will provide traffic calming, it will provide enhanced safety, and it really is helpful in creating a much better pedestrian and bicycle environment because it slows all traffic down. All movements have to go slow through the roundabouts. So the volume in this area will be much slower than it is. When you couple that with the improvements being proposed to the infrastructure of bike and peds, it really will make an impact. I'm sorry, I'm just getting coached by my team here. So my last slide is simple. I wanted to demonstrate to you what the cues would be on the approaches to the roundabouts and also on the driveways as you exit the site. I didn't tell you before, I meant to, but the level of service that we see in the future build condition during both the morning and afternoon critical commuter peak hour periods is a level of service A at the southbound roundabout, which is the best it can be. That's during the worst time to the commuter peak hour in the afternoon, which is our busiest. And then it's a level of service B at the northbound roundabout during those two commuter peak hour periods. So really good operations with this project in place and the plan for improvements. So hard to see at the scale, and I apologize for that, but the lines on the driveways basically represent what the 95th percentile queue is expected to be. And as you can see, they're super short. So really the waits on the egress to either driveway coming out of the site is really, really short, the car or less during the worst period, which means during all other periods, even better than that. If you look at the southbound ramp, again, we have really minor queues. I think at two of the approaches, it's about one vehicle, and then the westbound is two. So really, really short queues as a result of the design. And then the northbound off ramp and the roundabout there shows a little bit more of a queue, particularly on the westbound, but that's kind of expected because during the evening peak hour, when the train comes in and everybody gets out of their car, and you have platoons of vehicles headed in that direction. And so you will see, a little queue grow here and there, but 95% of the time it'll be at that level or less. So that's a really fast, quick overview of transportation. I'm happy to try and respond to any questions as they may come up.
Yeah, I think we'll do questions all at the end after your entire presentation.
Okay, I'm back. The letter P is killer. So I'm going to try to avoid the letter E. Okay, Rob Adams again. I'm going to drill down a little bit more into the site design, specifically some of the numbers. This is really brief. Smaller site, but our percentages for open space, beneficial open space exceed the percentages from the prior approved project. There's really a network that we've created. We'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. There's a lot to talk about. Again, I'm going to stay at very high level. Primary focus, as we talked about, is positive pedestrian circulation, making this a walkable, livable environment, creating some key open space moments along that, providing some multimodal transportation opportunities. And as Randy talked about, the improvements at the right of way. So we'll go through each one of these spaces kind of and give you just a little bit of flavor as to what they are. At the end, we've made some developments in the last couple of weeks, and we'll get to some of the work that we've been doing most recently as well. So the central green, as we've seen in the slide earlier, that kind of A area is really the heart of the development. A passive green open space with residential, and you'll see in a little bit some new retail and civic space being introduced at the ground level to really help activate this place as a programmable kind of active area. Main Street itself, focusing again on pedestrian realm, clear open sidewalks, treeways along the back of curb, large shade trees, as we've all experienced this summer. Healthy shade trees are such a benefit to the community and to the individuals. And so really looking at native species, a variety of species, multiple colors, providing a variety of plants to reduce any sort of monoculture. Also thinking about the ground floor retail experience, you'll see in some of these slides where we've located ground floor retail and created ample cafe zones and ample sidewalk to support the spill out of ground floor uses along Main Street. And as you'll see on that side, that central green area in a little bit. Grove Street itself, there's been a lot of conversation about that. We are providing, Grove Street will remain in its existing width, doing some restriping to help organize that, providing a treeway along the back of curb, a protected cycle track on the other side of the treeway, buffer, and then a pedestrian corridor, which then provides us an ample planted buffer up to building 4 and 5 along Grove Street. Lastly, 2 areas that we want to talk about a little bit more to the open spaces that we identified in the first plan, and we'll talk about again a little bit more later. On the left is a tenant-provided play space, kind of in the crux there of building 2 and 3 and 4 up at the higher Grove Street elevation. Grade change falls away a little bit, and so we're able to, I think, nicely nestle this play space in to that area, provide a little bit of grade change so it feels separated from Grove Street, provide adequate fencing and enclosures, but also provide a great amenity for the community. Not only when we all talk about community, the tenants and the residents of this place will soon be future community, and so providing that amenity for the tenants of this development. On the right, you can see one of the other areas of these pocket parks or right-size social spaces that we've created. There's, as mentioned, the 25-ish foot grade change that moves from Grove Street on the upper right down to Main Street on the left. And so creating a series of lawn terraces to create some social spaces with some more active seating just off the back of the sidewalks, both at Main Street and at Grove Street. Lastly, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it. We are very conscious of it. All of our efforts are around best practices around water management. And so protecting natural resources, obviously a comprehensive soil management plan, erosion plan, but also water quality methods, water management methods that are also about water quality as well about quantity. And Rich Holworth is here from VHB to talk about that if there's any more details and any more questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michael. And at the very end, we can share some of the work that we've done in the last couple of weeks to respond to some of the recent meetings and peer review comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Michael Lawson. I'm a principal with Manoa Wasco Architects and Planners, and we specialize in multifamily mixed-use developments throughout the Northeast. And I'm really excited to present the architecture of Riverside to you all tonight. A lot of the themes that you're going to see in terms of the architecture also flow through the open spaces and the site design that we've come up with. And you heard a lot about the pocket parks and the space making and the place making that we've created on site from Rob Adams. And you'll see here how we're then interacting and creating a cohesive new neighborhood for the site. So I'm going to be taking you around the site along Grove Street and then along our new Main Street as I show you new images and views of our proposed project. So this is the entry into the project, closest to the train station, the MBTA station, and how you would mainly enter into the site. Here you can see that on the ground floor, we've activated the buildings with extensive layers of retail that have really large open storefront areas. And this happens along the Main Street as you get a glimpse of that as you turn around, but also it was very important to activate this corner as you come into the site. As you go up Grove Street, we have, as I said before, these pockets of green space and pockets of public open space that kind of create a really great rhythm as we go up and down Grove Street and up and down Main Street. And you can see how the building architecture interacts with the improved pedestrian and bicycle improvements along Grove Street, as well as the different architectural features that we have on the buildings. We've really created and looked at how the building architecture cohesively and consistently is brought together with each of the uniquely designed buildings. And this includes a palette of materials that includes brick, different varieties of fiber cement panel, architectural storefront, and some areas where we really accent the windows with balconies and bay windows as well. Here you can see that we've created entry points. This is at the roundabout, as well as different breaks in the building to break up the massing of the building with step backs in different locations.
Mr. Watson, I've had a request, and this is for everyone, that if and when it's relevant, if you can use your cursor to point to exactly where on the image you're talking about, it would help some people better understand
Sure.
renderings. Thank you.
I can try to include that as we go through. Here, this is the opposite entry off of the new two-way road that we've created on the one side of this of the project. And here you can see that we've really looked to chamfer the building, create an area where we have a box bay and a monumental entry into the site. On each side, you see different compatible materials. You see on the one side that we have brick located here, as well as step backs on either side that transitions in material and lightness of color of the palette. As we proceed down Main Street, this is where you really get a sense of how we're going and creating a sense of place for this new neighborhood. And you can see the different architectural elements, including the traditional brick detailing and corbelling that's located on the sides of the buildings, as well as the bay windows and other architectural vernacular that we've created in the community. Going down the street here, you see we're further down into Main Street. We're at the heart of the new neighborhood where we have retail fronting on each of the sides. We have lobby and amenity spaces that are along Building 4, located over here, that create activity at this streetscape. And then as Rob Adams had discussed, we have areas of cafe dining that interact with the retail spaces that are occurring on the inside of each of the buildings. And here you can see all the different brick detailing that we have on the different buildings, really accenting and creating this really great architectural vernacular as we consistently move through the areas and see the pocket parks and how they interact with the building architecture. And that leads us back to the original image that we had, really taking in the idea of the green spaces, the architecture that we've created on each of the different buildings, as well as the different massings that we've created as you proceed down Main Street with the different step backs and different breaking of the building with different materials. The next piece is, this is a slide that you've seen in terms of our overall concept plan. But here I wanted to just dig a little deeper into the heights of the buildings and how they compare to the original approval that was approved back a few years ago. And you can see one of the consistent themes of what we're saying tonight is that the buildings and the project have been downsized. And you can see that in the overall heights of the buildings. Building 1 is 71.4 feet lower than what it was originally proposed as. Building 2 and 3 from Main Street is 52.6 feet lower than what it was originally. And then along Grove Street, we're pretty consistent with around between 5 and 10 feet of where it was previously, with both buildings 2 and 3 and building 4 being less and building 5 being slightly more. And you can see that our largest building is actually tucked in the back of the site where we have our parking garage. And that plus 3.7 feet is only the parking garage portion of that building. The portion of the building that is along the Main Street, as you can see right here, is actually lower than the parking garage in the rear area. One of the last things that I just wanted to bring up here is how we're incorporating sustainability items into this project. And one of the things that Newton has done is they've incorporated Passive House into the buildings that you build here. And some of the improvements and benefits of that is enhanced thermal comfort, quality assurance that performance is as designed, reduced carbon emissions, and better sound isolation. The building envelope and the systems that we put in these buildings is really brought to a higher performance in terms of minimizing the thermal bridging, right-sizing the heating and cooling, and really controlling the building moisture. And overall, the site, there is a real steadfast effort to improve stormwater mitigation, create shaded outdoor spaces, really designed with native plantings, and have multimodal connections and bicycle parking throughout the project. At this point, I'll hand it back over to Rob Adams, and he'll talk about some of the public realm updates that we have for the project. Thank you.
You.
Evening. One last piece. We've been hard at work. I think we've had some really good input from the community, stakeholders, peer reviewers, Town of Newton. And so we've made some progress, I think, in the last 2 weeks. And so we want to share some of the updates we've made towards improving the project, listening to the stakeholders, incorporating those changes. One of the primary ones we've talked about a little bit is this connection to the west to the Riverside Park. So linking where our sidewalk, our shared use path used to terminate at Main Street, we're now extending along the existing roadway system in a protected facility, a shared use facility, all the way to Riverside Park, connecting to its trail network. I can use my cursor, sorry. Thank you. It's a little lag time, but we'll figure it out. So making that connection along the existing roadway edge and connecting to Riverside Park and its trail network, and then ultimately connecting up to the MWRA property and the larger regional trail network. We wish that our project was of a scale that we could provide every scale of open space and public realm possible. We can't do that. We're creating some nice right size pedestrian realm on our project site. And we feel like making this linkage to the larger regional and large scale public realm open space is a real benefit as part of this project. The other part we've been working on, and we've been getting some comments from the peer reviewer group. I want to highlight some of the work that we've had already done and some of the changes that we've made recently. So this is really the core of the project, the main buildings, Main Street, Grove Street, and the open spaces. The ground floor uses, you can see the pink represents amenity space or lobby space. The blue is retail, the yellow is actual housing units, and then the gray is back of house or circulation. We wanted to think and has brought some concerns around solar gain. New England is a cool environment, and so want to maximize those areas that have more solar gain than others. The darker the purple on this plan, the more shadow it receives. This represents the equinox. So this happens twice a year. Obviously, we didn't show the winter because that has cast shadows at my house from here. And so you can see the darker purple are areas that get a lot of shadow. South is to the left, and so all the north sides of the building are primarily where the shadows are. And so thinking about the shadows, thinking about circulation corridors, the generator of users where incidental interaction happens, building entrances, thinking about all those things, we started to layer in where our open spaces were. And so they were important to us because they did maximize a lot of those open space and solar gain areas. They were also places along the back of sidewalks, expanded public realm, expanded public streetscapes to create those opportunities for people to gather. I will say that we did recognize that there was room for improvements. And so one of the things that we've done recently is that central green area, we've actually shifted this vehicular circulation to the left about 8 to 10 feet, put the vehicles in the shadow, they don't care, and created a bigger sun area on that right side of the plan. I'll use my pointer. In this orange area. So along building 4, we've increased the sidewalk width from 22-ish, 24-ish feet to approximately 30 plus feet. We've also relocated some ground floor retail from one of the other buildings around to this corner and introduced a civic and community space of about 2,000 square feet. So once a plaza that could be arguably criticized as not being very active now has a much larger sun streetscape and plaza, which is supporting retail and ground floor civic and community space. And then the last thing I think that's important to recognize is a lot of these spaces do become a series of events. And so some comments and criticisms around the connections between Grove Street and Main Street. And we feel like if you think about Hansel and Gretel and the Trail of Crumbs, like this idea that, you know, the play space up on Grove Street is one enticer, starting to introduce some public art into those stairs that move down to Main Street, this new civic and community space, expanded streetscape and retail. And then now this civic green becomes activated. So really starting to lead the users and the pedestrians from the higher level of Grove Street down into the inner sanctum, so to speak, of the space. And so we feel like some really positive changes, you know, appreciate the comments that NBBJ and others have made, community has made around some of these opportunities to improve the project. And I do want to point out real quickly, in one of the diagrams, just as clarity, garage circulation, there's access to the garage on the far north. Mouse is gone, but it showed up on the other plan. One point to note, there is garage access below building 2, which is located right here off of Main Street. That wasn't noted before, just one of the slides was in error. So anyway, that is a little bit of summary of the work we've been doing to date. I think some really positive improvements, and I'll turn it back to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. So that completes our presentation. I just want to mention, Madam Chair, that we're very appreciative both to the planning department and the peer review team for getting us their comments very quickly, which enabled us to actually start working, knowing we have a tight time frame on this. So that was very, very much appreciated. So that's it. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to the planning department next. In the meantime, I would like to welcome Pam Wright and Raina Getz, 2 other counselors who have joined us on Zoom. Planning.
I'm just going to stop sharing your computer screen.
That will help.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just pull up my presentation. Hopefully everyone can see that. Yes. Good evening. My name is Kat Kemet. I'm Deputy Chief Planner in the current planning department, current planning part of the planning department. We have two petitions associated with this project. The first is 238-25, a request to rezone 399 Grove Street to mixed use 3. The second is 239-25, a special permit to construct a mixed use development consisting of 750 residential units, mixed commercial and retail space, parking, and public open space with associated waivers. The site includes land from 3 different parcels: 0, 355, and 399 Grove Street. 355 Grove Street is a parcel owned by the MBTA and is zoned partially as MU3 and partially as BU2. 399 Grove Street is in the BU5 zoning district, which is the site of the former Hotel Indigo. And 0 Grove Street is in the MU3 zone and is part of the Hotel Indigo site. The site abuts the Charles River and Riverside Station, a golf course, and residential uses, the Riverside Office Park to the east, and I-95. Something to note here that we heard a bit about earlier is that the development site is reduced in size from what was previously approved in 2020 and 2021. This version of the project does not include a portion of the MBTA surface parking lot. The majority of the interior of the site is fairly level and lies below the surrounding grade of Grove Street, but there is a steep drop off along portions of Grove Street down to the interior of the site. This is a project that has a long history, as we've heard, so I'll keep the background here brief, but there have been a few iterations of this project over the years. In 2020, a mixed-use project was approved by City Council on the site, which rezoned certain portions of the site to mixed-use 3. This plan included housing, a hotel, retail, office space, and parking. More recently, there was an amendment in 2021 to that plan, which included changes to the height, density, and footprint of several buildings on the development. It included 370,000 square feet of lab and office use, 550 residential units, and 21,980 square feet of retail and commercial use. It also included commitments for offsite mitigation and other neighborhood improvements. The petitioner is now requesting a special permit for a revised project, which includes a mixed-use development with 750 units in 6 buildings. The project is roughly 890,000 gross square feet with about 20,000 square feet of retail and commercial space and 1,119 new parking stalls. The project will comply with the city's inclusionary zoning ordinance, which will require 151 units of deed-restricted affordable housing. The petitioner is also proposing a multi-use path on Grove Street, a bicycle lane between the site connecting to Lower Falls, beneficial open space that will be accessible to the public, and 2 roundabouts to mitigate traffic impacts in the area. There are a few different elements of zoning relief required. The planning memo goes into this in great detail, but I'll do a little overview here. The project needs dimensional relief, including a special permit for buildings that are over 20,000 square feet of gross floor area. It also needs relief for the height. The tallest building proposed is 83 feet and 7 stories tall. For parking, relief is needed to reduce the amount of parking required for commercial uses and to allow a 1.25 ratio for residential parking. In total, there's a waiver of 400 parking stalls that is requested. There's also a few elements of relief related to parking, including some stalls that are substandard size to allow restricted end stalls and a few other parking and drive aisle related reliefs. There's also relief requested for retaining walls over 4 feet, interior landscaping and lighting waivers, and to allow a freestanding sign. The petitioner requests to rezone one parcel, 399 Grove Street, from BU5 to MU3. They've also requested text amendments for the MU3 zone, some of which are necessary to allow for the proposed design here. The full list of text changes is in the memo, but a highlight is that it will reduce the lot area per dwelling unit from 800 square feet down to 520 square feet. It will reduce the lot area in MU3 from 11 acres to 9. It will reduce the amount of required beneficial open space from 42,450 to 30,000. And it will reduce the maximum allowed height by special permit down from 170 feet to 95 feet. There's also some changes to the uses in MU3. Some that are currently allowed will now be prohibited if this is approved. That includes government offices and uses, laboratories, and general office use. Some uses will be added conversely. So the added would be for-profit educational use, restaurants with over 50 seats, and elderly housing with services. The city has worked with several of our on-call consultants to review aspects of the project. They're all here tonight except for our consultant, Camoin, who reviewed the fiscal impact analysis. Camoin did submit their memo and noted that the estimates and methodology used in the fiscal impact was reasonable in their assessment. They asked for a few points of clarification that are fairly minor, so we expect the petitioner to respond to those points at a later date. In their analysis, Camoin noted that the biggest driver of revenue for the project will be property taxes associated with the residential and commercial uses on the site. The largest cost would be to the school system. Taking into account revenue and costs, the estimated revenue per year associated with the project is just over $1 million annually. And Camoin will be able to join the committee at a later date to get into this in greater detail. We're joined tonight by the rest of our peer review team. First, we'll hear from Corinne and Sergio from Green, who reviewed transportation and traffic. We also have here Alan Mountjoy from NBBJ, who looked at urban design, and Janet Carter-Bernardo, who looked at stormwater and civil design. So I will kick it off to Sergio and Corinne. Thank you.
Good evening. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergio Musto, and I'm joined here virtually tonight with Corinne Tobias. We are the transportation and traffic peer reviewers. Corinne is our transportation group lead, and I'm the technical traffic engineer for the peer review.
What's your firm?
Oh, Green International Affiliates.
Thank you.
So pulling up the presentation now. All right. So give an introduction. So moving on to the next slide, just a really brief overview of what we're going to present tonight. So a quick introduction, really brief recap of the comparisons and how it affects our review of these current site access and roadway network operations impacts, as well as the biking and walking connections to and from the site and review of the proposed parking.
Hi, and I apologize, everyone. I was muted earlier. I couldn't unmute, but I'm Corinne Tobias, and I'm joining Sergio virtually this evening.
Thank you.
And just Sergio already did the introductions, but here's their little introduction slide as well.
Sure. So this is just really brief, seen this enough that basically the site for all has been reduced. There's been additional residential units added, but the large office component has been reduced and has been eliminated. So that results in a great reduction in number of trips, which, as we'll see in a couple of slides, affects the offsite impacts of the proposed development. So review of the site access, as mentioned previously, the I-95 interchange is proposed to have one lane roundabouts proposed for each of the southbound and northbound ramps. And the existing site driveway will, based on the predicted traffic volumes, will remain unsignalized. And for operations and safety reasons, it will be limited to right turn entry from the either from the north or the east, and traffic coming from the southwest will oh there we go. And so traffic coming from the west will use the entry for eastbound access, which is currently on the which is proposed on the I-95 northbound on-ramp. It seems. Okay. Actually, Corinne, could you cover the cursor over the secondary site drive entrance?
Can you see my cursor here?
Yes. So that would be the primary driveway, which is proposed to be right entry only, although allow exits to either direction of Grove Street. And then the other site drive on the other side of the site will be accessed by the new roundabout to the same road that allows access to I-95 northbound. So what we wanted to request, as previously mentioned, the predicted volumes weren't found to be sufficient enough to warrant a traffic signal based on the MUTCD's 8-hour, basically meeting the thresholds for 8 hours in a given day for whether it might be considered sufficient to consider a traffic signal installation at a certain intersection. So just providing those volumes and warrant backup information. We'd also wanted to request on-site fire apparatus movements or attorney movements just to make sure that the city's fire apparatuses can maneuver safely and efficiently around the site. And we also, there's also some previous discussion on potential speeding on that main road going through the site. So although there are curb extensions proposed, which are basically at the internal intersections, the curb line actually sticks out into the roadway. Considering speeding might be an issue at this, or was concern of speeding may be an issue at this location, just requesting further review of traffic calming measures. So going on to the next slide, just a brief recap. So those little letters are, as previously mentioned, it's the levels of service letter grades. A is low delay and F would be pretty much longer delay, like an average of around a minute. So because of the newer sites reduced size, the levels of service for the weekday AM and PM peak hours, even during game nights, will not be, or like event nights where there's sporting events in Boston that would see increased use of the Riverside Transit Station. Those are not anticipated to be significantly impacted. However, we would like to request additional information regarding the Saturday midday traffic volumes, just because sometimes there's events going on in Boston that would attract a lot of transit use into the city. So it's not just, obviously considering the site at the transit station, it's not just motor vehicles that we've reviewed access for. Pedestrian and bicycle access to and from this site is also a major component, especially connecting it to the adjacent transit station. So the proponent has proposed basically a combination of either a shared use path or on-road separated bicycle lanes, which are along Grove Street and the new access along the south. If you can, the dark red and blue segments are the proposed bicyclist connections. However, although the applicant is able to provide accommodations to the northeast of this site, we do request that some review of, basically, we believe that there is on-site ability to provide even closer bicycle connections to the actual transit station as shown in the cursor. It's also noted in, if you can see in the lower right corner, the previous design plans had proposed a mid-block pedestrian crossing. And we were just confirming if this was still proposed, and if so, which is recommended, what sort of improvement options, including and potentially flashing beacons, would be provided for users of that crosswalk. We also reviewed parking spaces. So in addition to the parking or surface lot MBTA parking spaces that aren't being basically being touched, there's the 1,119 proposed parking spaces either in the garage or on street adjacent to the buildings. So for the on-street buildings, there was some discussion of it in the TIS, the Transportation Impacted Assessment Study. We just wanted to confirm the use, occupancy, and location of spaces for deliveries to the proposed businesses and for rideshare services. The parking garage has proposed 980 spaces. And although there was some information provided in the plans, we just want to request further information and discussion of the parking layout on each floor of the garage, as well as confirming bicycle parking locations, considering that approximately 8 or 9% of trips would be made via bicycle or walking. And also, for the number of spaces per residential unit, on average, there was the previous discussion of the waiver mentioned 1.25 spaces per residential unit. Of course, that would mean most of the residential units would allocate 1 space per residence. So I just wanted to confirm that this is made clear to residents to maintain basically the transit and bicycle walking heavy component of the site. There are also 135 of the proposed parking spaces are proposed to be shared or flexible parking, in which is anticipated that MBTA users would use these spaces in the daytime, and then these would be used for resident use at night. And basically, the information on basically proportionally how many spaces would be expected to be used by MBTA users was stated to be provided by MBTA data. So we'd like to request seeing the data provided from the MBTA. So overall, our recommendations and requests for further information that will work further with the applicant in the coming weeks. I'd like to evaluate bicycling connection to the transit station, improve propose the mid-block crossing on Grove Street to the northeast of the site, and introduce some additional traffic calming measures within the site, since walkability is going to be a large component and would want to reduce speeding within the site. Also would like to request updated signage and more detailed parking plans and the volume data to confirm that traffic signals are not, and the traffic signal warrants are not met, and that the roundabouts are a more feasible option.
So I'm not sure if we're taking questions at this time or if we'll be waiting for later, but that concludes our presentation for now. I did also want to say, we generally reviewed the traffic study volumes and methodology and agreed with their methodology and sort of the data that was presented. We just had a couple additional questions that we needed some clarification on, and those recommendations are based on our review of the site plan.
thank you. Yeah, we're going to do questions all at the end. I think people are keeping track of them. So we'll move on with the next peer reviewer. Thank you. Urban design, is that right?
Yeah, I want to check to make sure that my microphone is working. We seem to be having trouble all night. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Thanks, Kat. So I just want to start by saying we really appreciate the responses that have already been given by the development group, that they've responded to some of the comments we made probably less than a week ago or about a week ago. So Kat, if you don't mind going to the next slide.
Could you identify yourself first?
Oh, sorry. Alan Mountjoy with NBBJ
Thank you.
in looking at urban design issues. So other than what I just saw tonight, we've been responding to the package that was submitted earlier on from mid-July. That's what we've been making, that's what the memo is based on. So I'm going to try to both summarize what I said in the memo and then react sort of in real time to what I've already seen tonight in terms of some of the changes that I'm very gratified to see were made. This is the current proposal. I think we don't need to belabor the facts on all of that. I did want to, on the next slide, show that there were many, I say, aspirational aspects to the prior projects. Those included a much closer connection of transit to the actual mixed use, where one could really imagine oneself arriving on a train and walking into a plaza and being able to catch a shuttle bus or catch dinner or get a coffee. Those were very, I think, wonderful ideas about what a transit-oriented community should look like. In addition, in the latest iteration, it had mixed use, truly mixed use in the sense of office users that would animate the space during the daytime. And I know that we're not trying to make the perfect the enemy of the good here, but there were a lot of things that were good about this project that have been somewhat diminished by the reduction in the size of it. And we wanted to acknowledge that. If you go to the next slide, the original proposal had sort of 3 open spaces, one of which was mixed use adjacent to office users and residential, then the sort of the terrace space, and then the real civic plaza that was really meant to be where transit took place, with a very public-facing aspect to it. So I think we all feel perhaps a little bit of loss of that. So we want to make sure that we maintain as much as possible in this new project, because we don't know what the MBTA is going to eventually do. This may or may never be realized as a full connection all the way to the transit station. Maybe it will. Likewise, we don't have a lot of information about what the DCR is going to do with their site at Riverside. So we're working a little bit in the dark on 2 of the edges of this site, but I wanted to make sure that this project goes as far as it can to make improvements that don't depend so much on later phases, creating a good project for the interim. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. So so again, I think we applaud the transit and pedestrian improvements to the south and the west of the site, to Lower Falls, to the community center. These are all great things. The multi-use path is a great thing. Unfortunately, of course, it's just one piece, right? And this is a great first step. It's making those connections beyond the site that I think we want to spend a little bit more time on momentarily before we get into some other on-site issues. So, Kat, if you go to the next slide. Just pointing out some of the features that are within an easy 5-minute walk. Riverside Park is a 5-minute walk. That's the red line. It's a little hard to see. Williams Elementary School is about a 5-minute walk. Hamilton Community Center is about a 5-minute walk. And then the Leo Martin Golf Course, which, by the way, is a great place to go cross-country skiing in the wintertime if you've never done it, is also a great asset to this location. So we want to make sure that those were not being lost. If you go to the next slide, Kat. So one of the things that I wanted to point out was there's a really tight spot under the MBTA train. And while one could imagine bicycling along on a multi-use path, you suddenly have to find yourself under this overpass with a traffic with a signal pole or a pole right in the middle of the sidewalk. If we're really trying to encourage new students to go to the elementary school and people to come to this great new place, perhaps we should make it a little bit safer for them to do that by enhancing the pedestrian connections, even if the MBTA has no intention of doing them in the meantime. Next slide, please. Likewise, and again, I'm very gratified to see that the development group has thought about extending pedestrian accommodations to Riverside Park. I would like to see more about how that's done, given that it's also an on-ramp to the freeway and it's got sort of a unfinished recreation road that DCR may or may never actually be able to fix up. So to the extent possible, if this project can make those improvements, that would be fantastic. Next slide, please. So moving on to the open spaces, and I think there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I appreciate the changes that have been made to these two spaces, because I think it's important to note that while these spaces represent great assets to those who might live here, they are very hard to see from Grove Street. You really can't see it. At 25 feet is probably slightly optimistic. I think it's slightly more like 30 feet down, almost 2 full stories of commercial uses down to get to Main Street. Go to the next slide. You can see there's a great rise on Grove Street, and according to my calculations, which may be incorrect, it's about 25 to 30 feet of difference in height between those two spaces at the highest. So very important to create those connections because it's difficult for people to get out of the site. It's in a bit of a hole, and it's very hard for people to go by to see what's going on inside the site. So those are two things that I think a very important aspect of this site is the grade changes. Go to the next slide. You can see this is what I blew it up so you could sort of get the experiential effect of the fact that it is 2 full stories of drop from Grove Street down to the Civic Plaza that's down here. So I appreciate, and again, I applaud the landscape architects for thinking about ways to make this an attractive and perhaps eloquent way of getting down to the site and a much more fun way of getting up, because 2 flights of stairs, 2 stories is not an easy thing, even if there's an elevator. So next slide shows a little bit about, and again, I'm reacting here to the newer slide that I just saw, which shows a little bit more animation, if you will, to this space. And we very much appreciate the kinds of new uses that developer is proposing adjacent to the site, because it felt very, very passive and not particularly active. And while it is called beneficial open space, a lot of it had to do was with parking and drop off and delivery, which may or may not be considered beneficial open space in terms of passive uses. So next slide also shows some of the challenges of the shadow, which was mentioned by Rob. This is the equinox, again, in full sun at noon. That's great. But if you go to the next slide, you can see that in the winter, it is fully shaded. So not necessarily the greatest of solutions. And I think what Rob and his group are doing to shift some of this open space so that it has more solar access is commendable. And that's exactly what we should be looking for, is ways to either lower building heights or move open spaces so they have more active, more sunlight during the coldest months of the year. Go to the next slide. Again, I appreciate the new renderings of the way this terraced amphitheater works. I think it looks more convincing now than it does in this particular rendering. And we asked them specifically about how that space might be programmed. Calling it an amphitheater might be a little bit difficult to envision for some people. So we, again, applaud them for making improvements to what this space is like and also describing how Main Street will feel. Go to the next slide. The last thing I wanted to comment was on the architecture, and this slide was slightly improved from the last one, but this view of the site does sort of raise the question of mixed use 3 zoning, which has a 20,000 square foot maximum limit on building size. And this building is now called 1 and 2. And the reason for that is that it's actually 2 buildings put together, and it is very large. And it is very perhaps imposing on this corner. I think that we continue to want to see ways in which this doesn't feel like such a large blockade of entrance to the site. And we're looking forward to ways in which that might seem a little bit more welcoming than it does today. And lastly, Building 6, which of course is by its very nature a very big building because of the parking lot and is considerably smaller than it was in previous plans. I think what we're asking for here is maybe a little bit more thought about how the facade might feel a little bit less monolithic, although it will not be experienced in this way because it's mostly seen tangentially on Main Street. I just sort of a random comment in my mind is, while the garage entrance is clearly stated on the right-hand side, I'm a little unsure about where the garage entrance comes out on the left-hand side, and if it could arrive at this newly animated common space, that might be a good way to further animate that space by allowing people to come down the garage and walk out onto that space. Lastly, I just wanted to comment that view that I was just looking at. There's been some different images of what this looks like. I think it looks great as an entrance. I do question what they're looking at. If you stand out there today, it's not a very pleasant view of looking out over the parking lot. Some of the images show a tree line, some street trees located on the other side of the street to screen the parking lot. But again, if the MBTA parking lot is going to look like that for the next 10 years until MBTA decides what to do with it, it seems to me that some interim improvements might go a long way towards making that a little bit nicer of an entrance to the site. That concludes my comments, Kat.
Thank you very much. I believe we're going to stormwater next, but I'd like to just let you all know that we've been joined on Zoom by Councilor Vicky Danberg too. Go ahead, thanks.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Thanks. For the record, my name is Janet Bernardo. I'm a professional civil engineer with the Horsley Witten Group. We conducted a review of this site primarily for stormwater and infrastructure. We did the review in 2020 as well as 2021. And so with this latest review, we provided a memo on September 5th, and we have a few different recommendations. There was additional details we asked to be provided from the stormwater point of view, clarification of some of the soil testing and where that was conducted, as the I think there was more soil testing previously provided and it was not included in this package. Clarification because of the total suspended solid removal. There's a few catch basins that just have water quality inserts, and they may not have the percentage of TSS removal that is required prior to infiltration. So we're looking for a little bit more information on that. The next slide, please. We also asked for clarification on how the garage roof runoff is managed and whether the cars will be parked on the roof, which would add more sediment and grease and oils to the stormwater if that roof runoff is then being directed into infiltration system and may need more water quality prior to discharging and infiltrating into the aquifer. We recommend that a separate erosion control plan be provided to be included in the contractor's stormwater pollution prevention plan. Further clarification on snow removal. There is a plan that shows where snow could be stockpiled, but it's really in, there's a lot of trees in those areas. So it's not really clear how much snow can be contained on the site and what happens when it's a particularly large storm. There is a lot of roof area compared to roadway area, but that snow still needs to be put somewhere. hopefully it will snow again someday, but maybe not soon. And then confirmation on the 60-inch culvert. There is a large 60-inch culvert that existing that crosses through the property, through the MBTA property and discharges out to the Charles River. They will continue to discharge into that, just significantly reducing the direct flow from what is under existing conditions that has really no stormwater management happening. But it was going to be videoed, and I'm not sure if that happened or not previously. We looked at the floodplain, and the site is not within the FEMA 100-year floodplain, so there's no further action that the applicant would need to do for that. The wastewater that's estimated to be generated and the water demand that will be required for this new development has been reduced over what was previously approved. For the environmental site report, that was the same information because it's existing site conditions, and so we have no further comment on that. It was reviewed in 2021. The proposed grading and utility layout, there appears reasonable for this site and the sloping that is occurring, and the steep one, and it's relatively flat, and then it has this, once the buildings themselves have different levels of getting out to the street, to Grove Street. And the construction management plan is very similar to the one that was previously approved. The Saturday hours have been reduced to be no later than 5:00 p.m. Compared to the 7 p.m. that was approved previously. But besides that, it's basically the same. So that concludes our comments.
Thank you very much. Is that the end of the peer reviews for tonight? And you said we'll hear from Camoin on fiscal another time, correct?
Can you repeat your question?
Yes. My croaky, I said, you mentioned that we'll hear from Camoin on fiscal at another time.
Yes, that's correct.
So we're all set. Okay, that is anything else from planning? All right. So I'm going to ask Chair McCormick, would Planning and Development like to talk or ask questions now, or would you prefer to hear from the public first before you do that? I'm happy to do it whichever way you would like.
I would think to hear from the public first would be fine.
Just what I thought, but I wanted to give you the honor of going first if you wanted to. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing. Just to let everyone know, we're going to keep the public hearing open. This is the first of what will be several meetings. 2, 3, not set in stone yet. If you're in the chamber and you're a member of the public who would like to make a comment or ask a question, can you raise your hand just so I get a sense of how many people there are? Okay, and the same on Zoom. I see one hand up. I'm just trying to get an understanding of how to time this. If you're on Zoom, I'm not going to call on you right this second, but raise your hand if you want to make a comment. I'm going to give you another few seconds to think about that. And then some of you may pipe up later. Okay, not as many as I was worried about in terms of timing. So we're going to stick with the 3-minute limit. We don't have to, I think we can, I'd rather hear from everybody. And I think we can do 3 minutes tonight. So first, I think I'll start with people in the chamber, just because you're sitting on these really uncomfortable seats. And then I will go to the hands up in the order on Zoom. So I see Mr. Chapman going to the microphone first. Welcome.
My name is Ted Chapman. I'm a resident of Newton Lower Falls. I'm also the project manager for the Riverside Greenway Working Group that has been working on creating connections on trails, pedestrian bike trails from Lower Falls to Boston along the Charles. I wanted to say that the decision to extend the bike and pedestrian infrastructure from Main Street to MWA site is very much appreciated. And I understand that will have some influence on how the mitigation funds are for the project are going to be addressed. So I think it's absolutely essential that those connections are made. If you are familiar with this area, the MWA site connects to a bridge that goes to Charles River Park. That bridge is about to be finished so that there'll be access all the way from the site into Auburndale, but then Commonwealth Avenue bike trail is being under construction so that will connect to from Charles Street to the Commonwealth Avenue to Lions Field and all the way into Boston. So this is a very important piece of infrastructure that they've included. I have a few questions. I saw different iterations of the connections from the site to Lower Falls in terms of the section between Lower Falls and the north, the new roundabout at north, that it looked like the width of, or the separated bike path was going to be on the bridge, but not in other places. And I think that is a potential for creating a lot of confusion for bicyclists and danger to pedestrians. So I think I wasn't clear in the presentation how that was going to be addressed. But I think the previous iteration in 2021 had a separated bike path all the way to Asheville. So those are my comments. I am very appreciative of what the work that they're doing. I think it's from the Lower Falls perspective, we are going to have a much better experience with this lower traffic volume and smaller site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Can you say your address for the record,
Oh,
please?
91 Cornell Street, Newton Lower Falls.
Thank you.
And for Mr. Chapman and everyone else, we're not going to do back and forth on the questions, but I know that the development team and the consultants are taking notes on all of this. So you've gone on the record and these questions will be addressed. Next up, welcome back to the chamber.
Those benches are really hard. All right. Good evening, Chairman Kelly and city councilors and planning board chair McCormick and the planning board members. I am Marcia Johnson and I proudly live at 845 Washington Street. I love my apartment as well as the Trio Courtyard and Bramway Plaza. With both projects, there are 200 plus residents of all ages to enjoy stores, restaurants, and services. I think it is safe to say that Newtonville has become one of the most vibrant villages in the city. Residents and visitors are enjoying what these developments, along with the city, including the area council, have done to make Newtonville a wonderful place to live, work, and play. 10 years ago, Newtonville had an ugly parking lot. Now look at all that we are enjoying. Riverside began in approximately 2012. 13 years later, this property has been walked, analyzed, measured, assessed, reviewed, negotiated, many more than any other special project that I know of. It's my understanding that Mark Development's new plan does not include any office space, reducing traffic and building heights. Though commercial space brings more taxes to Newton, I do remember that this was a flashpoint for neighbors. As an affordable housing advocate, I'm pleased there is more housing than in previous plans. As we all know, Massachusetts needs more diverse housing options. I am sure that some residents are still concerned about traffic. Please know that traffic fears rarely materialize as people imagine. The same seems to hold true for school impact. I also understand that the proposal is limited to what is necessary to allow the current zoning development plan and financial mitigation package to remain in place. This council, the Lower Falls and Auburndale communities have an opportunity, just like Newtonville did 10 years ago, to make this project happen. I and many others are counting on you to take the needed steps to once again turn an ugly parking lot into a wonderful community asset. Counselors, I hope you have the courage and are ready to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I wondered if we were going to hear that courage word again tonight. Were there other hands in the audience while we're taking people off the uncomfortable seats? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Kylie Cutler and I am a resident in Lower Falls. I live at 9 Asheville Road. So my street is right where one of the proposed roundabouts will hopefully be. I am very excited about this project for a few reasons. First of all, selfishly, because I am an avid walker. I love getting places in Newton by walking, by biking, and I think that this project does a really good job at connecting the corridors. I would also like to say that I have lived in a development like this before. I grew up in this area. I'm actually a fourth generation Cutler in Newton, which is exciting for me. So I have some deep historical ties to the city, but I'm also excited about what a project like this could do for our future, not only for housing, but I hope for the general kind of like happiness of my neighbors. I worry about the loneliness that some people might experience living in their homes, even though we have this really nice neighborhood to be walking around, like not having a place to go and eat and socialize with your friends. I wonder if that limits some people. So yeah, I've lived in a place like this. It was awesome. Mixed use. We did have office space, but I still think even the way the project stands now, it would be a wonderful addition to our community. The construction might be a little bit annoying, but I think that Mark Development has done a really nice job explaining to us how the walking and biking corridors will continue during construction. So I feel good about that. And I just really hope that it goes through.
Thank you, Ms. Cutler. Somebody else in the chamber? Come on up. If someone else wants to speak, you can just get in line behind him and go quickly. Go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm David Depew. I live at 268 Grove Street in Auburndale, which is just on the other side of that train overpass from where this proposed development is. I moved here in 2023. I've loved the area as a renter, so I'm really excited that this proposal will give more people the opportunity to experience Newton. I think that part is great. One thing I wanted to confirm, my understanding from the proposal is that the 750 new apartments, not condos. I'd be interested to hear that confirmed. And the other thing I wanted to point out was if there have not been any conversations yet with the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, it might be interesting to have those discussions. They run their #1 bus to the Woodland Station right now. There's apartments there in the hospital and all of that. If there was such a large development at Riverside, they might be interested in adding a stop and help with any transit concerns. Beyond that, I also want to echo what Ted mentioned about the connection to Riverside Park. Living really, really close to Riverside Park, it irritates the heck out of me that it's so difficult for me to walk there, even though it's geographically so close. So the connection there, I think, would be huge as someone who walk and experience nature. So yeah, all for the project. I see a lot of positives and hope it goes through.
Thank you very much. Next up.
Hello, everyone. My name's Scott Nagel. I live at 9 Asheville Road with my wife, Kylie. I think this is a fantastic project. I think it's worth commending all the hard work that my neighbor Barb and Liz and the LFIA have done over the years, working very closely with Mark Development to really collaborate on a design that really is going to be beneficial to the community. I'm someone who experiences this site on foot most days. So I'm walking from my house on Asheville Road to the train. I'm looking at all those maps. That's where I walk every day. This isn't like an abstract idea to me. I really am experiencing this all the time. And every time I walk past that abandoned, blighted hotel, drives me crazy that, I've lived on Asheville Road for a few years now, and it's still just sitting there. So I'm really looking forward to having a more productive use of that site, something more attractive to get that blight out of our neighborhood. and to improve the pedestrian connection. So, if you walk from Lower Falls to Riverside today, it's barely walkable. You're mixing with traffic on a slip lane where cars are going 40 miles an hour. And so the pedestrian connections, as you know, it's really great to hear so many people get up here and talk about the pedestrian connections. But the proposed pedestrian connections, I think, are really going to be amazing. Of course, we need more housing, and that is another really fantastic aspect of this project. I certainly support adding more housing in addition to the pedestrian connections, in addition to just improving the attractiveness and the productiveness of the site. I just think there's just a ton of benefits to this project, and I hope it's approved quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel. Is that it for people in the chamber? Come up, sir.
Good evening. My name is Frederick Dingle. I live at 245 Grove Street, which is 2 addresses over from the proposed site. I have been speaking to some of my neighbors. None of us has really participated in this process, even though we're two over. We have been excited about this project to some extent. The development of this land would be beneficial to us, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that we are overjoyed by the density of this development. It is now probably the densest development in Newton. We're at 750 units on 9 acres. And we are obviously concerned about traffic patterns. So I'm going to hold my questions. I have not spent the time on this that you all have, in that I've just got engaged on it. But we do obviously have some concerns, and we look forward to talking more about those.
Thank you for coming, and I did get your phone message, and we'll talk further about how public notification happens, and I appreciate you coming here today. I'm now going to go to the very patient people on Zoom in the order in which they raised their hands. First, we have Mary Lee Belleville. Mary Lee, I hope it works better tonight than it did at our last meeting. Can you unmute and speak? You're unmuted on our end, or given permission to unmute. There we
Okay,
go.
I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Mary Lee Belleville, 136 Warren Street. I want to preface my comments by saying I definitely think this site is long overdue for some improvement. People have talked about a blight of the old hotel, and I do think that this is a good place to add some development. I also think that residential here makes more sense. I never really bought into the idea that people were going to take a reverse commute on the Green Line to work in this location. On the other hand, if people are living here, they can lots of options. They can commute into Boston on the Green Line. They can head north or south or west if they're driving. So overall, I think increased residential here makes a lot of sense. My big concern is, as somebody who does commute into Boston 3 days a week, those 3 days I take my dog to doggy daycare in West Newton, and I have 2 choices. I can ride the Green Line, which I do if I drive to Riverside and park, or I can drive in. And it's always a tough decision because it's sort of a toss up. I'm very concerned about the loss of public parking for Riverside Station. Because if I understand it correctly, from what I'm seeing, buildings 5 and 6 will take the place of the western lot, and then the current lot will stay the same. But I can tell you, you get there by 9 o'clock, you're overflowing into that western lot. You come home from work on a day there's a Red Sox game, and both lots are full. And I'm very concerned about the impact to the larger community with the loss of the ability to park at Riverside for $6 a day for 24 hours and take the train into Boston. I do it when I fly out of Logan. I'll park there because it's $6 a day. And so I know that nobody's answering questions here tonight, but some of the questions I do have is how many public parking spaces are going to be lost? And the spaces that are being created, for example, in the parking garage or the street level, are they available to the public? And are they available to the public at a cost that's comparable to what the public can park at Riverside today and take the train into Boston? I have other comments, but as you pointed out, Councilor Kelly, there'll be other opportunities. So those are my top of mind comments. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll look forward to hearing from you again. Next, Tom Gagan.
My name is Tom Gagan. I live at 32 Fern Street in Auburndale. And I'm speaking in support of the development proposed for the Riverside Station. We all know there's a housing shortage in the Boston area. This development will produce 750 homes at a site that is well suited for this kind of housing. It's next to the T station, close to major highways, and far enough away from both Lower Falls and Auburndale to minimize its impact on the neighborhoods. But I have a particular neighborhood concern, the Williams School, which my 3 children attended. Last year, according to the State Education Department, the Williams had an enrollment of 219 students. That's down from 303 in 2015. I remember in the early 1980s, the city tried to close the Williams. Parents were opposed and got the city to change its mind. The Williams School is an essential part of our neighborhood and should not face a similar threat in the future. How to prevent this? By building more family-oriented housing in the Williams district. And Mark Development has increased the number of 2 and 3 bedroom units in the Riverside project to allow more families with children to live there. Many thanks to our Ward 4 councilors and community members for encouraging this kind of housing. Now, this is a large development, even though it's been downsized. And size has been a topic of controversy in the past. But interest rates and construction costs are much higher than they were when Mark Development proposed earlier versions of this project. The development needs to be big to ensure that it is built to provide much needed housing and safeguard the future of the Williams School. I hope the committee and the full council approve the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gagan. Next, correct my mispronunciation, Ewan Cameron. Mr.
Well
Cameron?
done.
There-
Yes,
Oh, really?
well done. That's exactly right.
I wasn't sure about the Ewan part.
Yeah, no, you got me.
Go ahead,
Hi,
sir.
I'm Ewan Cameron. I live at 248 Grove Street, which is just up the road from the development. I have 3 children, actually 2 in Williams right now and 1 just starting at Brown. I'd like to say, I really do appreciate the smaller size of this. I share people's, some of the opinions in the past on the office space. I work in biotech and I don't think this office space would have been a good place for anyone to use. There's way more office space, as Mark Development certainly knows, than is currently occupied. In any case, I think one of the other recommendations, I think recently, to put in the roundabouts, I think that's also a great idea. Traffic coming through Grove Street is very fast. I'm honestly scared for my children. They walk up Grove Street to school. We're on the opposite side from Williams, and there's so many people driving so quickly up Grove Street, they can't cross the road. Thank God there's a crossing guard for like 20 minutes a day so that they can get across Grove. But I realize, local neighbors always complain about traffic, but Grove Street is way faster than you would think it would be, and people just zoom right up that road. So anything we can do to slow down the traffic, I'd really appreciate. Last comment, or maybe two quick ones. One, the size, the Grove Street is really the entryway to Auburndale for a lot of people. That building, from that perspective, is massive. That front face of that building as you come up Grove is really, I think, not going to give off the impression. The other 99 pictures that Mark Development shows of small buildings and comfortable space and community, that is not the image people are going to get when they approach that complex on Grove. It's huge. And as somebody pointed out, they're calling it buildings 2 and 3 in order to probably get around zoning rules. That's one big building. And I think that's something in future everybody should really take a careful look at, because and make sure that that perspective is shown. And last comment, I think, in looking at the parking, I was curious if one of the nice ways to reduce traffic on and around Grove is to allow the people to park and leave directly to get into the I-95 entryway. And I noticed in the building 5-6 parking, it seems like all the parking lets out straight into the main MBTA lot. And it seems like an obvious place to put an entryway, an entry and exit kind of behind the parking lot to allow them to go directly into that 95 entryway. So hard to explain, much easier with a picture, but hopefully people understand direct entrance and exit to that 95 route to the parking would be quite useful. Anyway, thank you very much. Great presentation, and I look forward to the development.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. I'm going to make another guess at a first name pronunciation. Cerise Jaffe?
That's excellent. Thank you. Yes. My name is Cerise Jaffe, and I live at 8 Hellrun Road in Newton Lower Falls. I've lived here for over 40 years, and I've been following this saga from its beginnings, and I was a former member of the LFII Riverside Committee. I too am very pleased to see the reduction in size. I think it makes a lot more sense for our city and for this area in particular. I do continue, and I've voiced this many times, to be concerned about the monolith as the design person talked about it. I think the inside of the development seems like it would be a lot more appealing than this huge building. To me, no matter how many balconies or steps or whatever you put on it, just looks like a prison and feels like a prison. And I'm disappointed in the design aspect of that. The other comment I had was that crossing from Lower Falls to this new development, in the last meeting I attended, there was some conversation about marking it in some way, and people continue to be concerned about folks walking to the T, and how can we make that a safer and a more walkable area without putting in a light of some sort, which obviously wouldn't make sense there. And my other comment also about entrance and exit, the right turn coming into the main part of the development, there's no light there, as I understood the diagram. And I just wonder if there are any concerns about traffic backing up on Main Street, since there might be more pedestrians and there may be some retail going on. And I'm sure it's been considered, and I'd be interested in hearing why that decision was made. And my final thing is, we know that there's sometimes hard to get retail folks. And I know in one of the other developments, there was an agreement there'd be no banks, and then there were banks. So I would just be really curious to see if there was ways that we could, encourage and stronger than encourage retail that really meets the needs of the community, and not just sort of more institutions like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jaffe. Lynn Weisberg.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Weisberg. I live at 5 Alden Street. I've been living in Newton for over 30 years. Like many people, I have been supporting the development of this site for many, many years. I thought perhaps, Chair Kelly, it might be appropriate to play the trailer from Groundhog Day, but we don't have time for that right now. I'm here to speak strongly in favor of the latest proposal for this site. I'm one of the leaders of Engine 6, which is a housing advocacy group. We applaud the fact that this will create 750 homes for people who want to live in Newton, 150 of which will be affordable as defined by our inclusionary zoning ordinance. My main concern is that the council, starting with land use and then the full council, make its decision on this application for a permit before the end of the council's current term. Chair Kelly did a masterful job in moving the amended permit for Northland through land use and the council. And I know she is going to do her best to do the same with respect to Riverside. But it takes more than just Chair Kelly. And I hope that the planning department and the council will treat this as the highest priority for the remainder of your term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Weisberg. We really, almost all of us, I think, want to get this done before the end of the term. Appreciate everybody's comments. It's as if you all had a rehearsal for this because it's before 9 o'clock, which makes me feel comfortable that we have another hour. Oh, one more speaker from the floor. Come to the microphone, sir.
Good evening. Sean Roach, 42 Daniel Street. This has been so much more boring than I had hoped for on my Tuesday evening. And I have to say that that's got to be credit due to Robert and the team, because this sounds like a hugely collaborative effort with the neighborhood. And so hence being boring. And I think because it's boring, maybe the council will be inspired to move this through before the next council is sworn in on January 1st. A couple of things. We would all like to have the design reins on something like this, and I've got plenty of ideas that I wish were here, but I will limit myself to a few things that I think are reasonable and doable. But before I do that, a couple of things I want to point out. Number of homes that are being built here, fabulous. The number of affordable units, fabulous. I've had conversations with planners over the years about creating connections in these large projects instead of breaking them. And I think that this is marvelous. The extension of the mixed use path to Riverside Park, I think, is a model for the way this should be done, and the connections to Commonwealth Avenue bike paths. This is really going to be, or shared use paths, really is making this a model again in a slightly different way. The few items on my kind of reasonable wish list, less parking. A development like this, sitting right on top of the Green Line, can use less residential parking. People will self-select. And I think that if there is less parking, it just means that it will attract people who need parking less. That would be good for the neighborhood and for the city and for the environment. 2, more retail. I think that'd be good for the community at large, but also for the folks who live here. Perhaps something along the lines of community gym space, exercise space. And I was thinking something along the lines of, maybe an outlet of the greater, I guess it's called the Charles River Y, or the Greater Boston Y. But otherwise, I'm hugely in support of this. I've been in support of all of the iterations to date. But again, congratulations on making tonight so boring.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Still, we're still before 9 o'clock, which I'm happy about because I get the sense that we generally would like to be done thinking and talking by 10, which gives us time to take it into committee and have some questions and comments and time for planning and development board. If you wanted to ask anything publicly or just intersperse your part of the meeting too, if things occur to you, just raise your hands. But do you want to take some time to talk with your committee now after hearing the public comments of the first round?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will say that our role in this is relatively small in that we are just changing the zone of the existing hotel to match the zone of the rest of the, which personally me seems, I like the project, seems like a very good idea. And I'll mention to the board that we will be discussing this at our Monday meeting in I guess 3 weeks in October. But I don't have any specific questions now. If anybody from the board does, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we can anxious to hear what the councilors have to say. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any P&D members on Zoom want to say anything now? And if not, raise your hand while we're going on. Mr. Doringer, you're smiling. Did you want to say something or not?
Like Peter has a question.
I think I see your hand up, Mr. Doringer.
Trying to unmute myself. So I just had a really quick question as to how many of the revisions to the actual MU3 zoning could have been accomplished through special permits. I didn't go through them all carefully, but I was wondering whether all the changes, all the substantive changes that are being proposed in the MU3 zone would be necessary, or whether special permits could be used to accomplish the same goal for this project. Thank you.
Mr. Lebmal, do you want to address that? No. Well, just because you're a planner for this group, I thought you might be able to address Mr. Dorange's question. Otherwise, we'll put that question on the record and address it another time with whoever is appropriate. No, planning, nobody's gonna, it's fine. Mr. Doringer, I think there's a little bit of confusion over exactly what your question was trying to get at. Do you think you could do a quick, concise summary of what you were aiming at with that question?
Well, I think of things like heights which are being changed, building heights which are being changed. There's a proposal to change the building heights, and if I recall correctly, and I'm wondering whether instead of changing the MU3 zone for this single project, whether the same effect could be accomplished by a special permit. That's just an example of I guess, my hesitation about trying to rewrite a zoning set of zoning rules that are available to other large projects, but to rewrite them to accommodate this particular project.
Okay, I think we have a slightly better sense of it. To me, this sounds like you're going to have a really interesting conversation at the next Planning and Development Board meeting. And we can all be thinking about that too. Thank you for giving that another try. Anyone else? Before we get into the committee, I meant. And if not, we are going to take it into the committee now for questions and comments. So why don't we start with Councillor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also found it a little on the boring side, I have to say, but I was very happy about it. So I have just a few questions, and I'll probably have a lot more later on. I wasn't clear to me whether the parking spaces would be separated as from residential units in terms of the cost, or would they be rolled in together, the parking and the residential unit? That was one of my questions. I also was curious about the phosphorus reduction. The city is working on that, and I wanted to know how much phosphorus reduction would occur with this project. I agree very much with the comments about the large imposing building and that design, which I'd like to see some discussion on how that could be improved. And then finally, I was curious about actually the timeline for completion. I know it's going to be a long time, but just thinking about that. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor Leary. Mr. Bookbinder, would you like to try and answer a group of questions at the end by keeping note rather than back and forth with each individual one, or how would you like to do this?
I'll be honest, as I get older, it's probably easier to do them as they come along. So
Okay.
the phosphorus reduction, I have no idea, but I might tag team Robert Rich. The parking, the parking will be decoupled. Okay, so that's for sure. And Robert, construction? 4 or 5 years probably on the construction time. Good.
I think the answer to your question is yes, we'll be addressing the phosphorus reduction through predominantly groundwater recharge chambers that be included as part of a major feature of the stormwater design. They'll enhance the water quality and also mitigate for some portion of the peak rate of runoff. So I think there'll be a dramatic improvement, post-development for that portion of the site that's going to be benefiting from those systems.
Use your microphone.
You'll be able to give like the actual figure, the number?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Could you just give us your name and affiliation?
Sorry, I'm Rich Holworth from VHB.
Thank you. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. It's been boring tonight, so maybe I'll create some fireworks right here. I don't know. We'll see. So the one thing I didn't hear tonight is the TDM. I don't know what the TDM is going to be, but ideally what I would like to see is something that we did for, I believe, Austin Street and Trio in Newtonville, and that's discounted T-passes. Ideally, it should be in perpetuity to encourage the residents and employees of the commercial spaces to take the train to the site. On the D line, you have a Star Market in Chestnut Hill. There's a new it's like an Asian food grocery store going into Newton Center, and then you have the Whole Foods in Newton Corner. Four Corners, excuse me. So I think that's important. Going off of memory, but for Northland, which I know is a completely different project, there were conditions in this special permit limiting daily car trips. And I don't recall if there was a similar condition for that in prior special permits for this particular development back in 2013, 2020, and 2021. I also didn't hear what commercial businesses are going in on the ground floor. Are they all going to be restaurants, coffee shops, grocery stores, general stores? I don't know. But I didn't hear anything about that, and I would like to know what's going in there. Again, the goal is to try to reduce car trips leaving the site. Ideally, they should try to, get as many goods and services on site. And I'm well aware of Amazon and Uber Eats and all those other things. One thing which I would like to know, and I don't know if anyone has ever done a study on this. I hear someone's phone is ringing. Has anyone ever done a study to figure out how long it will take for someone to walk out of the far top corner apartment in building 2-3 to the 4th or 5th story of the parking garage, which is on the other side of the development, and then leave that 4th or 5th story of the parking garage, drive down and exit the site? How long will that take? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? It seems like it will take a long time to actually do that. I would like to know. Another thing is, this particular site has changed uses, proposed uses over the years. I remember when, there was going to be a lab there, and prior to that, it was a hotel. And I'm just wondering, why aren't we coming up with ideas to increase commercial space without significantly increasing traffic? So I understand labs and office spaces are not in right now. I get that. But a hotel should be manageable here. There was one there before. I know for the project in Needham on, I think that's Highland Street, the Muzzy Ford, they are proposing a hotel there. Just wondering why we can't do a hotel or anything like that in this particular location. Same thing goes for senior housing. Why aren't we incorporating those uses into this particular development? This is a question really for myself and maybe planning. Is the fiscal analysis. I read it a while ago and it was up on the screen earlier tonight. It said it's going to be a net positive of $1 million. And I was just wondering, do we ever look back at prior fiscal analyses and see how accurate they were? The one that comes to mind is Trio. And there was a fiscal analysis for that. I haven't looked back at it in a long, long time, but I would like to know just how accurate these projections are. I mean, it's not going to be 100% accurate. I get that, but is it 90% accurate? Is it 70% accurate? Are they completely off? It's something that's, maybe I should look into that in between our meetings and just see what I can come up with. And then I understand there's going to be some text amendments to the MU3. I'm generally okay with those. And then the other thing is, and this has been bugging me about this site, and that is previously Mark Development has received a special permit for Craft Street senior housing. There was a mixed-use development in West Newton Square, Dunstan East, Riverside in 2020, an amendment in 2021, all special permits received, none of them developed by Mark Development, not a single one. And we're back at it again. So if, to Mark Development, imagine you're sitting in this chair right here on this side of the railing, convince us that this time it's going to get built. Because we've gone through many meetings, many staff hours, many public hearings, and we don't have any projects to show for it. So just convince us that this time it's going to be different and why. Those are my comments for tonight, Chair. Thank you.
Would you all like to take a whack at those quickly?
No pressure.
Maybe that wasn't a good choice of words.
No, so we will be, I appreciate all the questions. We will be filing the TDM. That will be here in time for the next meeting, October 7th. We also will be making a presentation October 7th about the retail. Just to say, we've had discussions. Randy is suggested that we try to have a food co-op, which is a great idea, not that easy to do. Robert's had discussions with different types of grocers and markets, not that easy to do. It's a tough environment out there. And if you drive around, there's a lot of empty storefronts, but we will be prepared to address that more fully on the 7th. I don't know, Randy, I'm sure we don't have an idea how long it takes to walk, but there actually is parking in building 2 and 3. There are 96 spaces in building 2 and 3. So the hotel idea, we've spent over a year with regular meetings with the liaison committee for the LFIA and the Ward 4 counselors. And one of the things that we had a lively discussion about was whether there would be commercial at this site. It'd be beyond the 20,000 square feet of retail, whether there would be what I would call substantial commercial. The neighborhood has a strong preference to keep this residential. I think that's one of the reasons you're probably hearing fewer voices tonight than you may have heard in the past on a big project like this, because the traffic, Randy made this very clear, the traffic is extraordinarily, Randy, 52%. sorry, 60% better. So that's the conflict. I can say, I don't think this is speaking out of the turn. The mayor weighed in because she wanted to encourage some commercial there. But we felt ultimately that our best path to success was to work in a cooperative fashion with the neighborhood leaders and the Ward 4 councilors. And that's what we've got tonight. If you ask Robert, is he thrilled with this proposal? I think he would say he's not thrilled. I don't think anyone's thrilled, but I think this is a project that he can try to build. Fair question, Councilor Lucas. What gets built, what doesn't get built. Let me just say, Trio is a wonderful project. You heard from Ms. Johnson, who lives there. I have numerous friends living there, and it's tough out there. It's tough to get a shovel in the ground. It really is. Robert has every hope that this is going to get built. It may, but it's tough out there, and we can't really promise anything except he's going to do his best to get this done.
Thank you, Mr. Bookbinder. We've still
Can
got
I just respond?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's just that walking thing from building 2-3 to the parking garage. I understand there's 96 parking spaces underneath, but there's probably going to be more than 96 units in that building. That's what I'm,
Yeah, that's fair. Can we, for the next time, we'll come up, we'll work that out for the next thing. Fair comment.
Let's come back to that. Thank you. We still have some counselors. I'm going to go next to Councilor Lobovitz, followed by Councilor Block. Councilor Lobovitz.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also share the concern about the massing of the building or those two buildings. I don't think I have to elaborate. It's sort of obvious from what we've seen. So if that could be addressed, I would appreciate it. In terms of the fiscal analysis, part of that, I think, was reflected in the comment that the people who did it were particularly conservative about the expenses for or the cost to the city of additional students. And I wondered, based on the distribution of the apartments, the number of bedrooms, actually how many students could actually be living there. It seems like not that many, actually, but I think it would be helpful to actually know what number was used to do that estimate. In terms of what Councilor Lucas said about the fiscal issues, I think it would be more helpful rather than giving a definite number, which I think is literally impossible down to the dollar, to have sort of a range for each category, and then one could look at it. I think that's a much better way of looking at fiscal and a fiscal assessment. I think it will be hard to get numbers from the past that are relevant, but I think it would be helpful to look at the actual assessment and the ranges. If there were ranges, and if there weren't, I think it's good to give a conservative and a range of possibilities in each category. I was just going to, I did have a question about the commercial space. I know that one could try to plan for what would be in each space, but I don't think the developer would commit to what would be in each space and how many square feet would be for each unit. So I wondered whether that we could hear more about that. A lot of good intentions, but in the end, I would think that they would just try to rent it to whoever was interested and try to accommodate that rather than say, we're never going to do a bank, for instance. So it would be helpful to hear more about how what the thinking is about that, and what we could reasonably expect. I do wonder about, for people who live in the area, whether whatever is there would be used by residents outside of development. It seems like this is a fairly self-contained development, and you wouldn't be getting a lot of people coming in from the outside, but I do wonder whether somebody from who lives there could comment on that, whether those that commercial space would be accessed by people not living in the development. I would think that most of it would be reliant on people who live there. So those are my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lobovitz.
Good evening, David Roach with the development team. In terms of school-aged children, we use the 3 different projection methods that are prescribed by the city and blend those. It came out with a result of 147 new school-aged children will be generated by the project, 70 of which would be elementary aged.
Did you want to address some of his other questions too about how members of the community might share, health club, daycare, dry cleaner, food co-op, restaurant, whatever was going in there?
I think we'll plan to come back on October 7th and respond to the whole
Great.
retail commercial space. I would just make one observation. I've always felt this is very convenient for people who take the T, if they could stop off the T and, I don't know who's going to be there, if it's a dry cleaner or some type of service, very, very convenient. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to address this evening, and October 7th, when we're back here, we're planning on giving a more extensive presentation on the retail. But one thing in regards to, like the comment about the bank, when we went through the TRIO process, there was a lot of uproar over banks. So we tried to argue that, not only banks, but national retailers. And what we argued for was, allow us, we want to create this sense of place by bringing in local retailers and, just it makes for a better environment, the national retailers. However, it's very, very expensive, to bring in locals, all right? As much as you want them, it's expensive. So what we argued for on TRIO was we want to bring in a mixture. The national tenants, look at it this way, it's no different than the residential. The national retailers are the equivalent to the market rate units. Without market rate units, you can't build affordable unless you get extraordinary subsidies. So I think TRIO is the perfect example. And we actually came back and argued our case a second time before the council and got a waiver, and we were allowed to put in Chase Bank. Well, what that Chase Bank did for us financially was help us create the retail environment that you see at TRIO today, which we think is a very, very successful mix of nationals and locals. So that's.
I just want to make clear that I'm not against the bank. I actually think it's a good idea. Yeah. Thank you.
He's just explaining kind of the financial balance of it,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to go to Councillor Block, followed by Councillor Farrell, followed by Councillor Albright, who's been patiently waiting.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is in my ward, and at the appropriate time, I will move to hold this. I know we will be returning to this project for more information and more questions. I want to pick up on a couple of things that Councillor Lucas brought up. In particular, the hotel. I think the petitioner is absolutely right that the immediate neighborhoods, Lower Falls and Auburndale, are keenly aware of the traffic impacts on Grove. And that residential generates less traffic than commercial. The hotel that has existed on this property is something that the neighborhoods found useful from time to time. And the traffic flow from a hotel is different, very different from office operations. The sad history of trying to develop this property has been bedeviled by serious market changes, which we've had no control over and which the developer has had to react to. The COVID pandemic completely changed the office market industry and the hospitality industry. So it was understandable that the hotel, which is approved in the current special permit, and changing that use to residential is why the zoning change is required from BU5 to MU3. So as we discuss this development, we need to think about this hotel use, which isn't used today because the Hotel Indigo is not open for business. But on paper, that's what it's still programmed for, zoned for. So if we want to think about the development of commercial property that will benefit the city's tax base, which we are all keenly aware of is under much pressure, this is something that probably deserves a lot more thought. I want to read something which I just found today very easily by doing a search for hospitality market information. This report starts, hotel operating performance in Boston has been performing remarkably well in the past year. As of June, 12-month moving average RevPAR, which I had no idea what it was, revenue per available room, and ADR, which stands for average daily rate, are at historic peaks of $168 and $230 respectively. So I think that as we reacted to the change in the markets from 2019 and 2020, the market continues to change and the market continues to send out messages. And this may be one that we need to think harder about. So I appreciate Councilor Lucas starting this off, and maybe Mark Development can include more of analysis of the hotel usage. Not so much what in the October 7th presentation, but not so much why you decided to close the Indigo Hotel when you did, but what is the hotel market telling you today? A member of the public talked about, I don't remember who it was, but did talk about day events and the pressure on this Riverside parking area. All of the traffic information which Randy Hart explained to us, which is written extensively in all the documents we've received, talked about the daily traffic activity, but not the unusual role that this parking lot plays when there is a major sporting event or celebration of a sporting event in Boston. And on those days, every single parking stall is filled. So how is that going to operate once this is built? Because when those events happen, and there is a page or two on this topic in the traffic report, and we may all want to dig it out and take a look at it, because the level of service is going from, I believe, a D to an F under the new structure. And it's the only F in all of the level of service data. So everything else looks really good except this. And when these events happen, I live in Lower Falls, you feel trapped. You really can't get into Newton on Grove Street because it's blocked. It's blocked with people getting in and out of Riverside. And we want people to park at Riverside and take the Green Line in to a day game at Fenway or some celebration downtown. So how do we all accommodate that? And I know there have been some discussions about how to divert traffic to the Woodland Garage, creating some other overflow traffic for events like that. We need to figure these things out so that we can handle them and that the public is confident that we have ideas about how to manage all this. I'm gonna stop there because there are a lot of issues that are related to all of this that people are raising, and the public is starting to pay more attention to this. The liaison committee has done a great job, and Mark Development has done a great job of interacting with the neighborhood. I want to say one thing that I especially appreciate, Mark Development's approach to this. This is not being presented to us as an amendment to a special permit. This is being presented to us as a new conceived plan, which is what it is. And I think that's how we're approaching it. And I really appreciate that. So that's it for now, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Block. I see Mr. Corf ready to give you some responses to some of the things you've said.
Yes, two questions. I'll go in backwards order, Council Block. So on, just so I'm clear, because we are going to come back October 7th when we hit the retail. We're also going to bring in our traffic or our parking consultant, who is working on the analysis for game day, Red Sox game day, which I think you'll find, satisfactory, but the proof will be in what we present on October 7th. But just so I'm clear, are your concerns addressed towards Red Sox game day, or is it primarily a concern over special events? Because they're two very different situations.
Yes, they are different situations, and I think they both deserve our planning. That's all.
All right, but
Personally, I've witnessed both, and they're pretty bad. Either one.
All right. So that will be addressed on October 7th. Now, as it relates to the hotel, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you state that currently the old special permit, the 2021 approval, included hotel, or did I mishear?
Was that the amendment that did the 21 amendment change that?
No, we never had a hotel in either.
Well,
the approval clearly had no hotel component. All the commercial was the two lab buildings and the retail.
I think Robert, there was 150 key hotel in the approved.
In the
plan.
first approval? Okay. I'm sorry. All right. I just wanted to make that clarification, but
No,
I guess
it-
the first approval had it, the second one eliminated it,
All right.
and in its place came the lab.
Yes,
Okay.
fair enough.
All right. So as it relates to hotel, I do think a hotel would be great here. And I think that all the data that you're hearing about RevPAR and ADR is all accurate. And in Boston, the rates are going through the roof and the occupancy is going through the roof. But the reason for that is that there's no new supply coming onto the market. Now, very early on, we reached out to all the major hotel chains, and the fundamentals right now, and you're right, it's just a moment in time, but the fundamentals for hotel at this current moment, just don't pencil out. And that's why you don't see any new hotel construction going on in the market for, several years now since COVID. But unfortunately, in our development here, with the time constraints that we have with MBTA, we have to get to a closing. And to have a hotel component as a requirement of this development is analogous to having to run the math to get to a closing as though you're not building the hotel. You have a loss of density on the hotel portion. And it would just put us, as much as we'd love to deliver a hotel, I think a requirement of such would put us in a situation where we wouldn't be able to execute. And those are my comments on hotel, and we'll be back to you on the 7th regarding Red Sox and special events.
Thank you. Councillor Farrell, followed by Councillor Albright.
Thank you, Chair. I have spent what to me is an extraordinary amount of time, given that I don't have any kids, working with parents on play areas over the past year. And I would like to hear a lot more about the opportunities that you will provide to young people, elementary school age, middle school age, who won't always be able to go to the school playgrounds or the playgrounds that are a 10-minute walk away, but places where parents can bring their kids and help them use up some of that energy. I look at what I understand to be the play area that you have there, and it seems to me, given the discussions I've had with parents over the past year, a fairly small site. And it seems to me also to be directed towards truly little children, which is good. But I'm listening now to parents who say, well, where's the basketball court? Where can my kids go out and shoot hoops? Where are they going to run around and close by and use some of that energy? So I'd like a little more explanation, please, about what you propose for recreational spaces and facilities for kids, and not only in the summertime, because that park obviously won't be able to use necessarily all year round, although certainly climate is changing in New England. But I'd like to know if there are any other thoughts about indoor spaces. And one of those pieces came to mind when the last gentleman spoke, talked about his thought that it would be really great to have a fitness center of some type in a project that's this big with these many people coming home from work and like to have a place, or going before work, like to have a place where they can go and work out for a while. And whether that's done through you or a contractor, but the point is that you would work to ensure that that kind of recreational facility is available for both kids, little kids, middle school kids, adults. And the last thing I guess I'd like to know is about a dog park. I've heard a lot about dog parks over the past year. And I don't know whether any of these people will have dogs with them, but will there be a spot for dog parks? So I'll leave it at that at the moment, but just on behalf of the kids of this project, I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more. Thank you.
On behalf of the kids and the dogs, come on up.
Rob Adams, Helverson Design, landscape architect. I have kids, but no dogs anymore. Those are good questions. The facility or the proposal currently has the play spaces we talked about. Most play spaces now have equipment that have 2 groupings, age 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. The space, I think you may have implied that it was relatively small space. It's not a massive play space, but it is a relatively good sized play space. Our firm does play spaces all over Boston, Esplanade Play Space, Frida Garcia, a bunch of others with DCR. I think the play space at Esplanade Play down near the Hat Shell, if you exclude the nature play portion, is about 4,200 square feet, something like that. Ours is, this one's, maybe it's 6,000. I don't know, it's on the slide, but we're only like 20% smaller than the Esplanade Play Space, which is a pretty large open space for play space. So it's not really that diminutive of a play space. It's actually a good size. It also has within it, as Alan talked about the grade change, there is some grade change there, and we're taking up some of that grade change with some terracing steps, little amphitheater, storybook place. So there's a variety of different types of play uses within that. And I think all of our play spaces that we design have both active and whimsy and social play associated with them. Lastly, as Alan also mentioned, the golf course and cross country and Nordic skiing is just a 5 to 10 minute walk. And while I said it would be great if our project was of a scale to provide everything to everyone, we cannot. But what we are doing, and as you noted as well, we're providing those important connections to facilities that exist, right? Using the existing resources that are in the surrounding community. And so both the community center, the schools close by, I know you would like to see something different, but we are providing those valuable connections to those facilities. And as discussed, looking at a 2,000 square foot civic community space within the ground floor of Building 4, providing potentially some off-season, winter season activities. So I think for the scale of the project, we are providing a good amount of play space. Yeah.
You would like to follow up, Councillor Farrell?
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, in doing your work, I should have mentioned this, that there is great concern in the development of all of these play spaces that they be integrated spaces for kids with disabilities and kids who do not have disabilities. And I hope that whatever you're planning in there will take that into very serious consideration.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Yes. Yes, 100%. As Rich doesn't talk about stormwater management, because that's what's in his DNA and what he does every day. Our design for open space and public realm is 100% inclusive of people with all abilities. And so, yes, while we didn't maybe talk about that, that is baked into every process and design that we do. Yes.
Thank you both. Councillor Albright, thank you for hanging in. And I hope you understand that I usually keep it in committee first, and I appreciate how long you've hung in here waiting to speak.
Thank you, Chair. No problem at all. Couple of questions. The first one is about the large plaza, the main large plaza, which you're moving over to have more sunlight. I was just wondering, and there was some discussion by the peer reviewer about activating that and that it was going to be better. And I saw that you were moving some retail space. I'm just comparing the Austin Street Plaza to the Trio Plaza. And the fact that the Austin Street Plaza has that restaurant right next to it on both sides actually activates that plaza much more than the Trio Plaza, which has a shoe store. So I'm hoping that some of the retail space that you move over has something that will really activate that plaza and make it someplace that people want to go and spend some time. So that's one question. And another one has to do with the pocket parks. We discussed pocket parks. You just talked about, excuse me, kid spaces. I'm not clear on what happens in all these pocket parks, so maybe you could provide more information, not necessarily tonight, about that. But I would like to know, how do you activate these pocket parks? What goes on there? I'll add my sort of complaint to the massing of that building 1-2 area. I have total confidence because when the Trio project first came to the land use committee, we complained about the massing of that project and you totally fixed it. So I have total confidence that you will fix that massing. You'll find a way to make that one massive building look more like smaller buildings. So I hope that you will accomplish that. I'll echo Councilor Farrell's request for a dog park. I know you did that at Trio as well in the end, so I hope you'll find a place for dogs. I don't think there is any public dog park in the area, so it would really be wonderful to have that. I think that might be it. Let me just, Councilor Farrell asked a question about, is there a fitness center in the project? And I don't think you answered that question, whether there is or not. There probably would be a great amenity if it's not there. So I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albright. Mr. Bookbinder.
On the fitness center, there is about 2,000 square feet set aside as community space. Now, we can dig a little deeper. Maybe there's a preference for that to be a gym as opposed to meeting space, or maybe it can be a combination. Rob, do you want to say anything about the activation of play space? And I know that Robert heard you on the massing.
The leasing agreement would have to allow dogs. Not all apartment buildings allow people to have pets. If you're going to do a dog park, go ahead.
Sorry. Regarding that plaza that Alan had mentioned and we had talked about, well, I think there's been a lot of talk about controlling the retail. Clearly, retail that faces into a public space, tree-filled public space with ample sunshine in its hardscape, I think is prime for retail that we're hoping for, right? So we're doing everything we can to activate it in that regard. In regards to the other public spaces, happy to share more at the next meeting, but again, creating opportunities for kind of accidental interaction on the back of sidewalks, creating flat level spaces within the terrace landscape, providing opportunities near front entrances for people to gather, kind of collect, share information, social time. That's really what those kind of small pocket parks are about. If you've been to any successful kind of dense urban areas, these pocket parks, it's not rocket science in many ways. Like, it's good scale, good materials, nice masonry on the buildings, big mature shade trees, nice opportunities to meet and socialize with others. That's really what makes a successful space. And so that'll be the focus of the kind of small pocket parks that we're proposing.
So with respect to the retail by the big plaza, I was trying to make the point that the coffee shop restaurant is a more successful use interaction with the plaza than the shoe store has been.
Yes, 100%.
So
Right.
that's, when you say retail, I'm glad it's retail, but I'm hoping it's restaurant retail in that location to make that plaza worthwhile.
Yes, I won't speak for, obviously that's a very true statement, but the market will control the types of retail that'll be available.
So first, on that retail space that was added to the plaza, 100%, what you're thinking, coffee, tables out on the sidewalk, that's clearly what it needs. And I can assure you, we won't put in another shoe barn there. So I think
I love the shoe barn.
I think they're doing just fine, Trio. But I'd also like to point out, in terms of children play areas, something that we haven't brought up or discussed is this project is going to have, we think, a minimum of 30,000 square feet of interior amenity space. So typically you don't design your amenity space, this early in the process. The space is allocated, and I'm just shooting from the hip on square footage, but I know generally speaking, you want to have around 40 square feet per unit, which is 30,000 square feet for this project. And I think when, we sit down with the leasing team, marketing team, and it's time to think about the amenity package, kid space is going to be, a big part of that conversation. So I want to assure you that it's been top of mind for us as a team from the get-go here. Thank you.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes?
am I, I realized that I left out one of the items that was on my memo, and I guess it would be helpful to get a clarification from the development team. Am I correct in what I think I read, that the children's play area that is included in the site plan, that's intended for tenants only? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to flag that for the benefit of everybody in the room, that is, it's not a public space, even though it's outdoors and on the street, it's a private enclosed fenced area.
Yes.
But as you pointed out, 20 or 30 feet below visible range.
No, actually,
the
the
different
play area is located at the same grade as Grove.
Oh, it's not the down
Great.
one. Okay. Thank you.
I believe it's somewhere in the middle of the two comments. It's depressed, I think, 7 feet. About 7th Street down from Grove Street.
So whoops. Okay. I think that we are done with all of our comments. I know it's not my fault that people thought it was a boring meeting, but I'm kind of excited that it was. It may not stay that way for the rest of the process, but there was a lot of work that went into making it well prepared and apparently boring. So we can fasten our seatbelts for the upcoming meetings. To that, I want to give Planning and Development Board a chance to say what their next steps are and to hold their process if they want. For all of the land use groupies that are out there, I know there are lots of you. We're dealing with some of these really big projects that have recently come before us, but there's a lot of other smaller stuff that we're still going through. We are meeting again September 30th. Not on Riverside, not on Dudley Road, but for those of you who are following all of the dormers and the setbacks, we are still meeting. We've got 3 meetings in September and 3 in October. And as we've said many times tonight, Riverside will be back on October 7th. Planning and Development Board, do you want to wrap up what you need to do for tonight?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd like to entertain a motion for us to continue this public hearing at our next meeting on October 6th. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Madam Chair.
You'll be meeting the night before we meet again on this. And Councillor Block said he was going to make a motion to keep this public hearing open for the City Council.
Move to hold.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, Councillor Laredo, good to hear your voice. Is anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? If not, we are adjourned for the night. Thank you all.